Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. Today's case takes place in Nanning, a city in China's Guangxi province. On the morning of January 24th, 2012, the second day of Chinese New Year, while festive firecrackers could still be heard echoing through the streets, an elderly resident was taking his usual morning walk in a village about 6 miles from the city center. As was his habit, he stopped by his vegetable garden to check on his crops. From a distance, the lush green rows of vegetables filled him with satisfaction. However, his contentment was cut short when his eyes caught sight of an unusual dark object in the corner of the garden. As he approached, the sight before him left him frozen in horror. A woman lay motionless on the ground, wearing a black long-sleeve sweater on her upper body, but completely unclothed from the waist down. Witnessing this horrifying scene, the elderly man rushed to seek help from nearby residents. Within half an hour, the Criminal Investigation Department of the Chen Xiao District Police Bureau arrived at the scene to begin their investigation. The victim appeared to be a young woman in her early 30s with no signs of life. The forensic examiner's preliminary assessment suggested that death had occurred within the past 12 hours. Notably, there were multiple wounds on her head caused by a blunt object, rendering her face unrecognizable. Given the state of undress, investigators couldn't rule out the possibility of sexual assault followed by murder to eliminate witnesses. The investigators discovered several significant details. The victim wasn't wearing shoes, and there were no signs of struggle around the body. This suggested that this wasn't the primary crime scene. In nearby bushes, they found a broken jade bracelet, likely belonging to the victim. Interestingly, she was still wearing other jewelry, indicating that robbery wasn't the motive. The wailing police sirens drew an increasingly large crowd of curious onlookers. Whispers spread through the gathering. A murder on New Year's. What terrible luck. Despite questioning local residents, no one could identify the unfortunate woman. The investigators faced a crucial question. Who was this woman, and why was she here? Immediately, a special task force was established to investigate the case. While waiting for the autopsy results to identify the victim, police simultaneously began reviewing all missing person reports filed within the city limits. However, with such a broad search area, identifying the victim proved challenging. A crucial lead was discovered when the technical team reviewed surveillance camera footage from the village road over the past 24 hours. At 3:45 a.m. on January 24th, approximately 165 feet from where the body was found, cameras captured a vehicle stopping by the roadside, coming from the direction of the city. The vehicle's hazard lights were on, and its automatic trunk opened. Through the camera, a shadowy figure could be seen getting out of the car, and about 10 minutes later, this person returned to the vehicle and quickly drove away in the same direction they came from. All these actions were highly suspicious. The investigators boldly hypothesized that this could be the vehicle the killer used to transport and dispose of the victim's body. Unfortunately, heavy rain had fallen early that morning, making the roads slick and wet. Combined with the reflection from streetlights, this made the surveillance camera footage unclear. As a result, police couldn't identify the license plate or the exact color of the vehicle. Even the mysterious person's actions after leaving the car were in the camera's blind spot. The only lead the police had was that it was a dark-colored SUV. However, in Nanning City alone, there were thousands of vehicles matching this description, making the investigation increasingly difficult and complex. When the investigation seemed to hit a dead end, a police station in Chen Xiao District provided the criminal investigation team with information about a report. Early that same morning, around 5 a.m. at this police station, an officer finishing his night shift was preparing to go home when 2 men rushed in to file a report. One of them explained that around 10 p.m. the previous night, his wife had gone out to buy medicine but hadn't returned. They said they had been driving around searching from 2 a.m. until the time they came to report, but had found no trace of his wife. Through investigation, it was learned that the reporters were the husband and brother of the missing woman. The brother, in particular, showed extreme concern about his sister's sudden disappearance. He was certain that his sister wasn't the type to leave without saying goodbye. Moreover, It was during the New Year holiday. The family had just reunited, and she had a 1-year-old son. There was no reason for her to leave like this. Unfortunately, at that time, less than 12 hours had passed since her disappearance, so the police only recorded the information and suggested the two men go home and wait, thinking the woman would return on her own. However, this missing person report became an important puzzle piece, helping the task force quickly connect various details. The time of death of the body found in the vegetable garden perfectly matched the time the woman went missing, and the age of the victim was also similar. There was a high probability this was the same person. Through verification, the missing woman was identified as Chen Xiao Hui, 36 years old. Immediately, police contacted the woman's family to identify the body. The next morning, in the somber atmosphere of the morgue, Xiao Hui's brother, sister, and husband were present to identify the body. Although the victim's face was difficult to recognize due to disfigurement, her sister Chen Xiao Hui immediately recognized it was her sister. Additionally, the broken bracelet found at the scene and the jewelry on the victim's body were all confirmed by the family as belonging to Xiao Hui. For additional verification, police conducted DNA comparisons between the body and family members. The DNA results matched completely, officially confirming initial suspicions. The victim was Chen Xiao Hui, the missing woman. The autopsy results showed that Xiao Hui died from severe head trauma caused by external force. A notable detail was that although the victim had sexual relations within 12 hours before death, there were no signs of beating or rape on her body. This suggested it might have been consensual activity. However, was the killer's deliberate exposure of the victim's lower body meant to send some message to investigators? In the morgue, Xiao Hui's family couldn't contain their grief, sobbing uncontrollably at their loved one's tragic death. After they calmed down, police took their statements. Sister Xiao Xia reported that on New Year's Eve, the night of the murder, she had stayed at her sister's home until 10:30 p.m. She clearly remembered that her sister had prepared an elaborate feast that evening, was in good spirits, and showed no unusual behavior. According to her husband Huang Ji's account, after everyone in the family had left around midnight, their 1-year-old child suddenly developed a high fever, and Xiao Hui rushed out to buy medicine. Noticing she had been gone for over an hour without returning, he worried and called her repeatedly, but she didn't answer. He wanted to go out and look for his wife then, but because their young child was sick with fever, he had to stay home and wait longer. He thought that because it was New Year's and midnight, nearby pharmacies might be closed, so his wife had to go further to buy medicine. However, after another half hour when his wife still hadn't returned, with no other choice, at around 2 a.m., he drove to take their feverish child to Xiao Hui's cousin's house, then drove alone searching everywhere. After searching until 5 a.m. without finding any trace of his wife, he had to call his brother-in-law to go with him to the police station to file a report. A woman going out alone late at night was indeed very dangerous. However, what puzzled the police was that in the current situation, this didn't appear to be a robbery murder, nor did it look like rape, so what was the killer's motive? Based on the leads Huang Ji provided, police checked pharmacies within a 3-mile radius of Xiao Hui's home. Although it was during the New Year holiday, several 24-hour pharmacies were open, but no staff member remembered Xiao Hui. This was strange. What had happened to her before she reached a pharmacy? Next, police wanted to determine the exact time Xiao Hui left home, hoping to find clues from street cameras. Since the apartment complex where Xiao Hui lived had only one pedestrian entrance arc exit, police checked surveillance footage from 10 p.m. on January 23rd to 2 a.m. the next morning. Just as Xiao Xia had said, at 10:28 p.m., she appeared on camera and then left her sister's home. However, after careful review, police saw no footage of Xiao Hui going out to buy medicine around midnight as claimed. This greatly surprised the police. Had something happened to her before she left the apartment complex? Or was her husband Huang Ji lying? Just as police were beginning to suspect Huang Ji, officers investigating at Xiao Hui's apartment complex brought back encouraging news. A neighbor surnamed Xu revealed to police that he and Huang Ji were close friends. Around 1 a.m. on January 24th, when he had just returned home from playing cards, he received a call from Huang Ji asking to borrow his car. Being acquaintances, he didn't ask any questions and simply agreed. Huang Ji quickly returned the car afterward. Besides this, the neighbor claimed he noticed nothing else unusual. However, with their professional instincts, police immediately realized that neighbor Shu's car was a black SUV, very similar in appearance to the vehicle seen at the crime scene. They immediately reviewed surveillance footage again and discovered an important detail. At 1:20 a.m., this car returned to the apartment complex, then left again at 2:55 a.m. The driver was very likely Huang Ji, who had borrowed the neighbor's car. These clues made Huang Ji the prime suspect. Police immediately went to his apartment complex, contacted neighbor Shu to inspect the car. When they opened the trunk, they found it unusually clean, as if it had been thoroughly wiped down. Therefore, police used technical forensic methods to conduct a careful inspection. Finally, their efforts were rewarded. There were 2 to 3 bloodstains remaining in the car. Although these bloodstains were very small in area, technical experts were still able to collect samples for testing. One day later, DNA test results showed these bloodstains belonged to the victim Xiao Hui. At this point, Huang Ji officially became the prime suspect in the case. Without delay, police brought him and the black SUV to the station for investigation. Faced with police questioning, Huang Ji stuck to his previous explanation. But when asked where he had gone to look for his wife and why he didn't use his own car but borrowed the neighbor's car instead, his answers were unclear. Moreover, during this process, he couldn't control his shaking legs, and his eyes were filled with anxiety. These details, in the eyes of experienced police officers, were clear signs of lying. While Huang Ji was trying to buy time, police had gone to his and Xiao Hui's home as they suspected this might be the primary crime scene. Indeed, although nothing appeared unusual to the naked eye in the room, under luminol testing, police quickly discovered blood spatter and drip patterns on the living room floor, bathroom, and doorframe. Tests showed all blood belonged to Xiao Hui. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Huang Ji could no longer defend himself and was forced to confess. However, this result was unbelievable to Xiao Hui's family, especially her brother. He insisted this was impossible. He said his sister and brother-in-law had been married for 7 years, and from when they were dating until now, he had never seen them argue. Moreover, his brother-in-law treated Xiao Hui and her entire family very well. How could he possibly be a killer? Even neighbor Shu, who lent the car, was extremely shocked because this couple was known as a model family in the entire apartment complex. Whenever people saw them outside, they were always smiling happily. So it was strange. How could Huang Ji, a person who left such good impressions on both relatives and those around him, commit murder? What made him act so cruelly toward his wife on New Year's Day? In the interrogation room, Huang Ji confessed to his entire crime process. On New Year's Eve, after her sister left, Xiao Hui began cleaning the house and then put their child to sleep. During all this time, Huang Ji just sat on the sofa looking at his phone, not moving at all. Close to midnight, he thought his wife had gone to sleep, so continued sitting in the living room looking at his phone. Unexpectedly, his wife came out from the bedroom at this time. When she saw her husband still engrossed in his phone, Xiao Hui grabbed it, wanting to see what had him so captivated. The images and messages that appeared on the screen made her blood boil. Before her eyes was a nude photo of a woman. As she scrolled through, she discovered more provocative images this woman had sent to her husband. The flirtatious messages between them were like knives stabbing into her heart. There was no doubt her husband was having an affair, and this wasn't the first time Xiao Hui had discovered this. In a fit of extreme anger, she slapped Huang Ji hard across the face, making his ears ring. She threw the phone at him, her voice dropping with contempt. "I won't endure this anymore. I'll let everyone know how fake you are." Hearing these words, Huang Ji panicked. He was actually a very prideful person who didn't want to have to bow his head before relatives and colleagues in the future. When Xiao Hui turned to go back to the bedroom, Huang Ji pulled her back, not letting her leave. Xiao Hui took off her slipper and beat him repeatedly, as if venting years of pent-up resentment. She hit harder and harder, and during the struggle, she pushed Huang Ji down onto the TV cabinet. At this moment, there happened to be a hammer nearby, and he reflexively grabbed it and struck Xiao Hui's head. She collapsed immediately. Looking at the dark red pool of blood on the floor, Huang Zhi stood frozen, not knowing what to do. At this moment, crying sounds from their child in the bedroom snapped him back to reality. He quickly ran in to comfort the child. After the child fell back asleep, Huang Zhi went back out to find his wife still lying motionless on the floor. He bent down and moved his hand near her nose, only to discover she was no longer breathing. At this point, he realized things could not be undone. His mind raced with thoughts about his wife being gone, that he might be arrested, and then who would take care of their son. He started taking deep breaths repeatedly to calm himself down. Finally, he chose the most irrational path, to dispose of his wife's body by dumping it as far away as possible. Not only that, but he wanted to erase all traces connecting to himself, creating a false crime scene to make people think Xiao Hui had been brutally murdered by someone else. So he took the hammer from earlier and continued striking Xiao Hui's face until it was unrecognizable. Then he began a series of actions: cleaning up the messy crime scene, wiping away all bloodstains, changing his wife into clothes she usually wore when going out. Extreme anxiety and fear made him drip with sweat. Looking at the clock, it was nearly 2:15 a.m. He wondered how he could transport the body outside. Using his own car would be too easily discovered by others. At this moment, he suddenly remembered his close neighbor Shu, knowing that during the New Year holiday, this person usually played cards until 1 or 2 a.m. before returning home. He immediately called Shu, lying that his car was broken and needed to borrow one. The other party agreed without hesitation. After getting the neighbor's car, Huang Zhi began implementing his disposal plan. He was extremely careful when moving the body, trying not to make any noise that might wake the neighbors. It took a great deal of effort to get Xiao Hui's body down to the garage and into the trunk of Shu's black SUV. Then, he went back upstairs, carried his sleeping child down and placed him in the back seat. Next, he called Xiao Hui's cousin, making up a story that she had gone to buy medicine and hadn't returned, asking to leave the child there so he could go look for her. After dropping off the child, he drove alone toward the city outskirts. At this point, Huang Zhi had only one thought. He needed to find somewhere really deserted, as far away as possible. But suddenly his phone rang, startling him as he was focused on driving. It was Xiao Hui's brother calling, who after hearing from their cousin was very worried and said he wanted to join Huang Zhi in the search. He told Huang Zhi to quickly return to the apartment complex so they could search together, saying if they couldn't find her, they would report it to the police. Hearing the words, "report to the police," Huang Zhi immediately stopped the car. He looked at the roadside. It was dark and quite deserted, and at this point, he didn't have time to be more selective. He quickly dragged the body onto a small path and removed Xiao Hui's pants. In his mind, he calculated, if police discovered the body, they would think Xiao Hui had been raped and murdered. But his supposedly perfect actions to create a false crime scene to deceive the police were easily detected and investigated using modern technical methods. In reality, some things can never be hidden, just like a broken love. How tragic for Xiao Hui, who despite enduring so much, could never have imagined her life would end so tragically. Huang Zhi had always played the role of a model husband and father in front of all friends and relatives. But someone had actually noticed his true face early on. That person was Xiao Hui's sister, Xiao Xia. After the case occurred, Xiao Xia agreed to be interviewed by the press. She revealed that she was the only one in the family who knew about Huang Zhi's affairs. This wasn't because her sister had confided in her. She recounted that during a family gathering in 2008, when borrowing her brother-in-law's phone to make a call, she accidentally discovered romantic messages between him and other women. At that time, Xiao Xia found herself in a dilemma. She didn't want her sister's marriage to fall apart, but she also understood Xiao Hui's personality too well. If she exposed Huang Zhi's true face, her sister would certainly feel deeply humiliated. Xiao Hui was inherently a strong woman. She worked hard and had been promoted to a management position in her company. With family, she only shared happy things, never mentioning sad matters. She cared greatly about others' perceptions. Having a perfect family and successful career was her greatest pride. Wanting to save face for her sister, Xiao Xia had to bury this secret in her heart. In the following years, she often tried to indirectly ask about her sister's marriage. Xiao Hui always insisted everything was fine, with no problems. But thinking back now, there seemed to have been several times when her sister wanted to confide something, but then held back. After the tragedy occurred, Xiao Xia was filled with regret. She felt she should have told her sister as soon as she discovered Huang Ji's first affair, so her sister could have stayed away from that terrible man. Perhaps she wouldn't have lost her life over this. Xiao Hui's brother also expressed his remorse at not realizing how broken his sister's marriage had become. If he had cared for and worried about his sister more, perhaps things would have turned out differently. But all these regrets now came too late. The tragedy had occurred and couldn't be changed. Throughout the interrogation process, Huang Ji consistently maintained that he killed his wife during a struggle, that this was a crime of passion committed in anger. This type of crime differs from premeditated murder. In many countries around the world, when determined to be a crime of passion, it would be considered for a reduced sentence. However, in China, this distinction is not yet legally recognized. In 2013, the Nanning Intermediate People's Court in Guangxi Province delivered its verdict. Huang Ji was found guilty of intentional homicide and sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve. Faced with this sentence, Huang Ji did not appeal. Perhaps deep down, he understood that the remorse and guilt over his wife's death could never be compensated for. He could only use his remaining life to pay for his crime. Chen Xiao Hui's tragedy leaves behind painful lessons about marriage and love. In today's world, women need the courage to face the truth, no matter how painful. Rather than choosing endurance and concealment to save face, they should stand up strongly to protect themselves. Because an unhappy marriage is more painful than being alone, and silence can sometimes lead to unforeseeable consequences. Now, how will their young child face life? How can they accept the truth that their father took their mother's life on what should have been a joyous New Year's Eve? These are questions no one can answer, and they will also be the torment that follows Huang Ji throughout his remaining years in prison. And that's today's case. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next videos.